Well, today I'm going to argue why Democrats should actually be happy that Donald Trump was elected president. And I have two main reasons why Donald Trump is a good thing he was elected president. Number one, the Democratic Party needs to actually have real consequences for bear hugging people like Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm aware Donald Trump's picking a bunch of neocons in his own cabinet. If you actually look at his cabinet, it doesn't really have much social cohesion. We have one element of the cabinet that has completely different ideas how the government should run. People like RFK and Matt Gaetz. Then we have typical Republicans who are neocon warhawks like Mike Huckabee and Marco Rubio. I think he's just trying to wait and see how this all shakes up and probably will pit them all against each other at some point. I think this might be similar to Donald Trump's first term. He might be completely ineffective in implementing his agenda just because of the straight up infighting of the party the whole time. And the second reason I think Donald Trump being elected is a good thing is it's a great litmus test for our democracy. We have people like George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Joe Biden, and Barack Obama who wanted to concentrate all of this power into the executive branch of our government. And I was really concerned when they were starting to do stuff like this back in the Bush administration because I was like, you're not always going to be able to pick who's in charge, and that person might shake things up or they might be crazy. Are you really comfortable that the executive branch has the ability to assassinate American citizens abroad without trials, has the ability to indefinitely detain American citizens without trials, has the ability to attack countries without congressional authorization? I think we should go back to what we used to do, which is declare war. And if you want to know who I thought should have been president, and our only ideal president was Ron Paul. Yes, I disagree with libertarians on many issues, but Ron Paul was literally the reset button. So now we have the nuclear option, which is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump was actually the change agent in this election, and he won. The American people aren't happy how things are going right now. So they were like, well, we're going to try a radical change agent in Donald Trump and see what he does this time. And all the people who are freaking out that Donald Trump is president, he's going to end America, don't worry. In 4 years, we're going to be just fine. Things might get shaken up in our government a little bit, but I believe our democracy is resilient. And Donald Trump is not going to be able to destroy the democracy of the United States. And people just kept fear-mongering the whole time, being like, God, I hope this guy doesn't become president. And then he becomes president, and people look ridiculous because they're just like, well, we've been saying he's Hitler the whole time, and now to make our narrative in our heads make sense, we just elected Hitler. And then you see all these people cozying up to Donald Trump, like Joe Scarborough, who is leading the charge that Donald Trump is a fascist and he's going to end America, and is now kissing the ring of Donald Trump. My theory is these people know he's not going to end democracy. They think Donald Trump is a terrible representation of the United States to the rest of the world. And one could argue that George Bush was a terrible representation of the United States to the rest of the world. I mean, he attacked countries illegally. He tortured people. He looked like a buffoon compared to other presidents. But it's actually a good litmus test for our democracy. Let's put someone in charge who's not part of the Washington elite. See what happens. Hey, you gave him all these terrifying executive powers, so you're going to have to trust him. And hopefully the people who are like this idea of American exceptionalism, like Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, will rethink their positions on this unitary executive theory, being like, hey, the president can basically do whatever he wants. I brushed up on some things that Dick Cheney said during his administration with George Bush. And he claimed during a state of war, which we're in constantly now, the president can do whatever he wants. And hopefully now people like that can re-examine their own ideology, being like, hey, maybe that's not a great idea because we have all these endless wars, and now an executive's coming in that we don't agree with, who's not part of the Washington blob. Maybe we shouldn't give this much power to the President of the United States. But no, people like Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney will always be set in their ways. They're completely fine with giving executive authorities to people who are actually part of the Washington blob. But when you actually have a change agent like Donald Trump, then your theories actually get put to the test. Is this a good idea? Should the president have some limits on his powers? Because Donald Trump feels that he's been politically persecuted, and I think he has been politically persecuted, because I believe they wouldn't have gone after him with any of this stuff. After he left the presidency and he didn't actually run for re-election, they would have been like, you know what? Bygones be bygones. Just go away. We already know you get away with a lot of shit because you're a president. And hopefully this idea of the unitary executive theory doesn't come back to bite all of us in the ass.